Good morning, everyone. And I hope you all had a very happy Valentine's Day yesterday. And in the spirit of that day and all the weddings which follow love and all the weddings that have been held in this church, several in my family, I wanted to share a piece of music today celebrating that spirit. Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg wrote a piece called Wedding Day at Troldhaugen, or Troll's Hill, which was his residence. Now, the piece was actually written to celebrate his 25th anniversary, but still, it's a very descriptive piece celebrating a wedding out in the countryside. It starts out with the arrival of the guests and all the partying before the wedding. It's very bouncy. Then it gets quiet for the wedding ceremony. Second section. Then the ceremony's over. Guess what? It perks right up. A lot of partying again, a lot of noise. And finally, everybody gets tired and worn down, and the piece gets very quiet. And then somebody sets off a firecracker at the end. In the interest of brevity, since the first and third sections are the same, I will start with the wedding and play it through to the end.
Jesus has been speaking about difficult truths and an uncertain road ahead. The disciples are confused and anxious, longing for clarity. So Jesus leads them up the mountain, where light breaks through and a voice calls them not to understand everything, but to listen. Let's listen as Pam reads from the Gospel according to Matthew.
I'm reading from Matthew 17, verses 1 through 9. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses and Elijah talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud a voice said, "This is my son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground and were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them, "Tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead."
Thank you, Pam. May God grant us wisdom and understanding. You know, some nature enthusiasts have been waiting all year for the conditions to be just right this month up in Yosemite Valley for the fire fall. Have any of you seen it? A few of you. Yeah. Imagine you've made the reservation. You have to do that now because so many people want to be there. You've packed the car and you've made the 6-hour or so drive up there. And you've gathered with all the others with their massive, cameras and everything along the rocks, and some are sitting on blankets and some are standing, and everyone's facing the horse tail fall on the side of El Capitan. And at first, the waterfall, it's just the same old waterfall, silver and steady. But then it happens. The setting sun hits just at the right angle, and you witness a transfiguration. The water appears to literally catch fire. It starts out as a dull orange, and then it grows deeper and deeper to the point where it actually looks like molten lava falling down the granite face. It looks something like that. And you pause, and you are caught in awe. And even the river below seems to glow. And the sunlight makes the ordinary feel alive and luminous. And then, almost as quickly as it began, the moment passes, the sun dips just a little lower, and the firefall fades, and the water returns to its usual silver. But for that brief moment, it feels as though the whole valley is holding its breath with you, inviting you to slow down, to pay attention, to notice, to listen, and to see how fleeting beauty can awaken in us all a sense of awe and wonder. And that sense of awe is not unlike what Peter and James and John experience on the mountain with Jesus in today's text that Pam just read. We're told that Jesus' face shines like the sun. We're told his clothes gleam as white as light itself. And Moses and Elijah appear beside him. Of course, they're figures from Israel's past representing the law and the prophets. So this story is shining light on the long story of God's work among humanity. And then a voice from heaven declares, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." This story has captivated Christians for centuries, and some take it quite literally, and others understand it symbolically. Either way, the point remains the same. On the mountaintop, Jesus is revealed as the culmination of God's ongoing revelation. Moses representing the law that Jesus reinterprets, Elijah representing the prophetic tradition that Jesus fulfills, and then Jesus himself embodying God's presence in human flesh. But this story really isn't about Jesus glowing spectacularly next to law and prophecy. It's about seeing, it's about listening, it's about discovering new insights, new meaning, revelation. It's about those moments when, the world looks the same and yet somehow feels different. Can you remember a moment in your life that stopped you in your tracks and reminded you that ordinary life is often charged with extraordinary meaning? Of course, we must have eyes to see it and ears to listen carefully for it. And that's why today, Science and Technology Sunday fits so naturally with the Transfiguration account. Today we celebrate the ways that humans, made in the image of a creative God, Imago Dei, explore and understand and transform the world around us. Consider just a few remarkable breakthroughs unfolding in our lifetime. Scientists have developed mRNA vaccines that have already saved millions of lives and earned a Nobel Prize, a triumph built on decades of curiosity and experimentation and perseverance. Here a photo of Katalin Kariko and Drew Weissman, the Nobel Prize winners. And then they're engineers creating fantastic things like artificial limbs controlled by thought. I'm not kidding. Restoring mobility and independence to people who once lost both. This is an amazing video clip we can
and
show
spaced
here.
it all out completely. These are your latest, aren't they? And they're extraordinary. Just first of all, show us what they can do and why it's different from before.
Yeah, so these are made by Open Bionics. These are called the Hero Pro, which I was a part of the co-design and development of. So they're like 3D printed, but they're extra strong, extra quick, and they're most advanced on the market. So they're muscle operated. We've got these little myopods which track my muscle movements. Squeeze to close, flex to open, and I can cycle through like 30 grip modes, do anything from like a peace sign to a pinch to a point, and pretty much anything. And you can pick.
Pretty incredible, huh? Yeah. And then biologists are using CRISPR, gene editing technology, to correct all kinds of genetic disorders, offering hope where none had existed for people with sickle cell anemia, for example. Here's a photo of the world's first patient treated with personalized CRISPR gene editing therapy for a rare metabolic disorder. It's a photo of Penn Medicine's Kiran Musunuru and Rebecca Aarons Nicholas holding KJ. That's sweet little KJ right there, post-infusion. Her life totally changed because of gene editing. And then, of course, astronomers, where many of you rocket scientists out there have been involved in, the James Webb Space Telescope, receiving images of galaxies formed billions of years ago, revealing a universe more vast and beautiful than our ancestors could have imagined. This is a photo of the actively forming protostar EC53 in the Serpens Nebula. That's the one that's circled over there. Yeah. If Ray were here, he could tell us all about how he, could go into great detail about that. And innovators in renewable energy are harnessing solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, biomass, and now even tidal power from the tidal waves, meeting human needs while caring for the planet God has entrusted to us. Now, these breakthroughs, and there's so many more, right, are transfigurations of their own kind. They illuminate, so to speak, what was once hidden. They invite us to see creation and our place within it in a new light, And they echo the creativity of God at work in human minds and hands. God has gifted us with ingenuity, and today we see it flourishing in ways that heal, in ways that connect, in ways that sustain life, from regenerative medicine to wearable health technologies. I've got one right here on my finger. I'll be careful how I hold that finger up, but anyway. Science is helping us care for one another with greater compassion and precision. And yet, Scripture reminds us wisely and humbly that just because we can do something doesn't mean we should. Our creativity must be guided by ethics, must be guided by a reverence for life and a concern for the common good, because without that grounding, technology itself alone can distort truth, deepen inequality, and erode human dignity. Whether we like it or not, we're entering a world of astonishing possibilities. I was in Phoenix for my future daughter-in-law's graduation from nursing school, and we were walking from the hotel to the restaurant, and all these Waymo cars come by, and there's nobody in the driver's seat. Autonomous vehicles, brain-computer interfaces, smart cities, and these tools hold potential to reduce suffering and expand human flourishing, but they can also carry risks that demand faithful discernment. And that's where the church comes in. The church has a role to play here, and not just as a passive bystander of all this amazing technology and science, but as a moral witness. We're called to be both hopeful and cautious, curious but also critical, celebrating innovation, yes, but also asking the hard questions about how this might be used for evil, what potential consequences might arise. So just like the disciples on the mountain, science and technology can help us glimpse God's glory in the smallest of particles and in the farthest stars. And for those who have eyes to see and those who have ears to hear, science and technology can deepen our wonder at creation, and so much of it still remains mysterious and alive. Interestingly, the Transfiguration story doesn't end on the mountaintop, although the disciples would like to camp out there, right? Let's just stay up here. Jesus leads the disciples back down into the valley, down into the crowds, into the world that's still aching for healing and justice and meaning. So this enlightenment that they experience on the mountaintop, it's meant to be carried with them to guide them, not to be hoarded, but to be used. Likewise, the enlightenment of science and technology, it's not an end in itself. It's just a tool, a way of seeing the light more clearly. But scientific discovery and innovation must always be paired with love and justice and compassion. Wonderment ought to lead us to responsibility. Revelation ought to lead us to faithful action. Today, as a church family, we might ask, well then, what transfigurations could happen among us if we brought the same level of curiosity and courage and creativity to our shared life here that the scientists bring to their labs and the engineers bring to their prototypes? What if we really had eyes to see and ears to hear? How might that affect what we do at MBCC? I mean, what if we approach church with holy experimentation, welcoming questions, nurturing everybody's gifts, empowering every person to contribute to the mission in meaningful ways? What if innovation shaped how we feed the hungry? Well, this is what we do. We've always done it. We just collect groceries and we do this one. That's good, but what if we got really creative with feeding the hungry, caring for the earth, teaching our children, welcoming the stranger? Maybe it begins small, with curiosity about the way we've always done things, with simply a willingness to ask, what if we did this instead? Would it have more impact today? Perhaps. What if we dared to see familiar challenges in a new light? What if we dared to dream bigger? What if we passionately innovated in a church? We might begin by benchmarking other churches in LA that are actually doing that are experiencing inspiring transfigurations. For instance, Mission Hills Church practices what they call radical hospitality, embracing people of all identities, building community gardens, and modeling environmental stewardship as a form of spiritual care. We could benchmark Christian Fellowship Congregational UCC in San Diego, which brings people together for worship and, drum roll, summer vespers. Jazz vespers. And this is an example of a blending tradition with cultural creativity and a sense of community. Our amazing Kate Krellin is actually planning a jazz Vespers service for this summer, so stay tuned. And if you read the Easy Reader this past week, then you likely saw our ad for Vacation Bible School this summer. Billy and the reconstituted Youth and Christian Ed and Youth Board are planning an innovative VBS this summer called Breakout. You know how you have those breakout rooms? You have to figure out how to get out. Well, it's kind of that theme. The kids will find clues and they'll solve puzzles. And what a fun way. What a fun, creative, innovative way to teach the Bible to children. These are just a few examples, but the pattern is clear. Flourishing churches are not waiting passively for the future to arrive someday. They're co-creating it now with creativity, innovation, and passion. Friends, just as Jesus came down the mountain to serve and to heal, we're called to do more than just see the light. We're called to bring insights of science and the gifts of human creativity and our own spiritual passion in service for others. This is true discipleship. When wonder and enlightenment lead to action that heals the hurting and lifts up the marginalized and restores dignity to those whom systems have failed. And let's face it, our systems today have failed so many. Jesus had a special heart for the least of these, and the least of these are getting beat up, torn apart, discarded, degraded. I suppose we could close our eyes and shut our ears to all of this. We could do the same with all the scientific and technological advances in this brave new world of ours. And I suppose we could also refuse to learn, refuse to adapt, refuse to upgrade, and leverage modern technologies in the life of our church. But that would be a foolish mistake with serious, grave consequences. My hope and prayer is that we'll celebrate the gifts of science and technology while serving as a moral witness. I'm inspired by the passion, commitment, and creativity required to develop such things as gene therapies and vaccines that literally save lives. And it's high time that we in the church applied the same passion, the same commitment, the same creativity to fulfill the church's mission for such a time as this. Despite living in a divided country, and we're so divided right now, we can find a way. We're smart people here. I mean, we have some of the top scientists in the world. One of them is the top person of GPS space technology, and others make sure the satellites stay in alignment for our national defense. And you guys know how smart you are. Why not put all that brain power and that creativity and that passion focusing on the mission of our church? We must find a way to partner with neighbors across political and cultural divides, to care for the earth and to feed the hungry and welcome the stranger in innovative and creative and far more effective ways. With God's help, we can do it. Church, may we rise strong and see the world and the light of God more clearly. May we listen, as Billy was saying, may we listen to Jesus more faithfully, and may we serve more compassionately, and may we love more boldly, for nothing less than the flourishing of humanity is at stake. Amen.